Hi everyone, I'm Nathan. Welcome. So I actually work at a company called Gusto. So it's funny that, no worries at all. There's a company based in the UK called Gusto, and we often get confused like in our different tweets, like cooking subscription companies. So oftentimes we get tweets talking about how we didn't deliver their food, and we have to like say, no, actually we do payroll software and benefits, something very, very different. It's fascinating to watch our tweets come in. Anyways, yeah, so we're at a company called Gusto. We do payroll and benefits for small and medium-sized businesses. I was the first application security engineer there, and for a moment in time, I was also the only member of the security team. So I want to start out with a little story. Initially, a lot of my coworkers and friends thought that it was super cool that I was the only one on the security team. They thought that I had a ton of power and I could do whatever I want, again, as the only member of the team. But spoiler alert, I had no power. Then when they knew that I was the only member, they wanted to know more about it. They were curious to see what it actually entailed, what my day-to-day would look like, again, as the only member on the team. Then as I started to go over some of the responsibilities and what my day-to-day looked like, they realized, oh wow, this is not fun. This is a lot of work. And maybe some of you have been in the same place where you feel overwhelmed, understaffed, and honestly, you just don't know what to do. So to sum it up, that actually represented a lot of my day-to-day and what it felt like, in that I had a lot of things stacked against me. So I want to take a step back and kind of go over what things I had to face and what challenges I had against me. So first off, I was outnumbered by the engineers from 1 to, I think it was 100-ish at that time. So as you can imagine, a lot of them and only one of me. And next, Gusto is a startup, so there are ever-changing priorities. What is important one quarter is probably not important the next quarter. There's a lot of things going on, trying to iterate and move fast. And then finally, I was also an individual contributor. So I had no one reporting to me, didn't have any fancy C-level title, and I was just someone pretty small and far down on the whole chain of command. So the fixed input was my time. I only had a certain number of hours in a day, and for those of you who know me, I like to sleep like a lot. I think like 8, 9, 10 hours, so probably an unhealthy amount. But again, I wasn't willing to give up my sleep, so how could I balance my work at Gusto, getting sleep, and everything else that I wanted to do just as a millennial living in San Francisco? And I wanted to maximize my output, so how could I do that? And let's go ahead and dive into this. So first off, I had several technical strategies that I use and I want to go over with you. I think a lot of you are quite familiar with the idea of shifting left, correct? Nothing new here. But then there's one term that Tanya, who was the keynote speaker, has been advocating for, is the idea of pushing left. And this is the concept of moving security as far left as possible. So even before features are developed, during the ideation phase, we're going to get security involved at the very, very beginning. So why was pushing or shifting left so important for me? And this is because once the code has been written, some features have been shipped, then effectively, there's nothing I can do. I'm not going to be the one to block a release and say, no, you can't do this. And with all the code to review, it's humanly impossible. So I need to find a way to insert myself at the very, very beginning to get at the very forefront and see what the engineers and the rest of the company wanted to ship and to produce. So it's honestly as easy as ABC. Always be coding. So if you haven't seen Dino Diazovi's Black Hat keynote this past year, he had an amazing talk where he advocated that modern day security teams are most effective when they write code. And in fact, they should be writing code. So I'm coming from a software engineering background, and I can confirm that writing code is really, really powerful. And during my time, like in the very beginning, I often wrote code to build security features for our teams. So whether it was trying to strengthen our 2FA flow or trying to improve some reset password flow, that in itself was powerful because I had control over that. I was able to see what was going on with the code in regards to the security. And then when reports would come in through our bug bounty or pen test reports, oftentimes I would go myself in the code base and create the pull requests themselves. So one thing that may be a bit controversial, but is that I gained instant respect from a lot of engineers instead of being able to just like hand it off and say, hey, go and fix this for me, by me showing them that I can hang with you, that I can write code. That in itself gained instant credibility. And I will say that even when I went over the code reviews or the different design doc reviews or flows, by being able to point out maybe some tiny flaw in the OS2 implementation, then they were able to trust me that much more. So by gaining that much respect, then I was able to create that rapport with the engineering team. So the next thing I want to go over is, again, still talking about software, is that we should be automating anything that's repeatable and deterministic. So if you think about it, it doesn't make sense trying to do something that machine software can do faster, more reliably, and that will always be correct. So one example of this at Gusto is a tool that we use called Danger. It's a fantastic open source tool where I'm able to write custom rules to look for basically whatever I want. And one example is if someone touches a configuration file, in this case, Brakeman, that it'll automatically alert me. So if they try to be sneaky and add in an exception to bypass one of the things that I've built in, I have like eyes on them. So, or if they try to use a vulnerable function, or things that maybe seem kind of suspicious, then I'll be alerted as well. And this means that I won't have to go through every single pull request. I won't have to go through every single config file that I've set up. I have eyes basically on the entire code base and the entire system. So I can just keep on top of my email, and then I have eyes in nearly every place. This actually leads well to my next point, is static code analysis. So it's useful because, again, this is not me going through every single pull request. This is a tool that I had implemented and put into our CI/CD pipeline. So continuous integration, continuous development. As soon as a developer pushes a pull request, it'll run a whole suite of tests, and then one of them is Brakeman. And And that's the tool of choice that we use at Gusto. So by a show of hands, how many of you have used Brakeman or familiar with it? So 1.5. Cool. So for those of you who are familiar, Justin Collins over there in the audience, he is the author of Brakeman. And he's actually joining Gusto, which is super, super cool. And this is cool, but also terrifying. So super cool because I get to learn from him and pick his brain on just a whole bunch of static code analysis things, security things, but also terrifying because now he can see how I built up the thing, the tool that he built, and how I integrated it. So hopefully he won't judge me too much depending on how I did it. But overall, yeah, thrilled that he's joining Gusto. And then also one thing I wanted to note on this as well is that this provided instant feedback for the engineers. So as soon as the pull request was created, they were not blocked on me to go over their code, to review it, to give it a thumbs up. So if this passed, and then assuming the other criteria were met as well, they had the full liberty to merge their code, and again, without me blocking them, I was able to empower them through this mechanism, which I think is pretty cool. And the next thing I want to go over is vulnerable dependency management. So very much along the same lines of the previous few slides about talking about software and code, this is the idea, just repeating myself, is that I don't need to have eyes on every single package, every single config. This is the perfect way for the engineers themselves to get instant feedback. If a package is outdated, they're going to receive a ping that their team needs to update their gem, their package, or whatever else they're using in this thing. And then GitHub has a tool built in called Dependabot. They bought it about a year ago or so. And that has been fantastic because it creates pull requests automatically. It gets assigned to them, to the respective engineering teams. And then it's been a lifesaver, saving a lot of time on my end trying to coordinate different things. So now I want to move a little bit further right down the whole chain of development. So pen testing. I think we have some mixed feelings on this. Some people love it, some people don't love it. But whatever your stance is, I think we can probably all agree that it's not avoidable in certain situations. So at a minimum, I would say that you should be running pen tests at least once a year, maybe even more if your budget allows for it. And so there are quite a few wins that you get from this. So from the first one is that it's an easy compliance win. So when, let's say your company wants to create a partnership with a different company, a different partner, and then they want to send you a massive 28-page report talking about your security posture, talking about personal experience. Those things are no fun to fill out. And if you've had to fill out some of those things, they suck. So by being able to pass along a pen test and demonstrating your security posture to these potential partners, it saves you a ton of time. And then also it gives you some baseline of how secure your product or your application actually is. And then another thing which may not be super obvious is that you can gather a lot of data points around your security posture. So from year to year, as you want to see how much more secure you're getting, we can see how many critical, high, medium vulns you get and start to graph and benchmark that. And as we all know, the execs in upper management love data. And here are hard data points where it's often difficult at times to get hard data for security. This is an easy one. Here are just a few vendors that we've had good success with at Gusto. And next, again, similar to pen testing, but I would argue different and important as well, is to run a bug bounty program. So this is something that I took a lot of pride in trying to set up, trying to gather interest from the different research community to have them proactively hack on our Gusto platform. So one of the benefits of this is that I have hundreds of different eyes, perspectives, methodologies actively hacking on our platform 24/7. So I myself also love to get down and dirty, fire up Burp Suite and start to poke around and hack stuff. But again, that's probably not the best use of my time, again, as the single engineer on the team when there are a lot of other higher priorities. As much as I would love to poke around and try to find the next big fun vulnerability, I'm going to leave it to others who have it as their sole dedicated mission to find vulnerabilities on our platform. And again, so this is a continuously monitored thing, so I don't have to worry about it. I can go sleep at night and wake up my inbox if I see some things. That's great. That's work that I didn't have to do, was able to empower and pay others to do for me. So those were some of the technical ones. Now I want to move into the cultural side. I think this is often overlooked in our industry and something that I'm proactively trying to change, again, with this talk right here, and even as I talk with different friends, colleagues, and different people in this industry. I want to advocate that, sure, it's great you can be as technical, as smart as you want to be, but if you don't have people on your side, then you're powerless. So with that being said, these were some of the departments that I partner with closely at Gusto. So this is just a snapshot of what, or who I've partnered with. But again, this may look very different at your company. I just want to go over some of the reasons why I chose these 6 teams to closely partner with. So the first one is IT. And I like to think of them as frontline security. So when something goes wrong on the employee's computer, they oftentimes go to the IT help desk or the IT team or engineer asking, why can I not log in? What's this duo push? Or what's this random thing showing up? They get a ton of the requests from the everyday employee. So by working with them and having IT potentially pass along anything that may be suspicious up to security, that was a huge win. So the IT team was quite a bit larger than just myself. So that, again, was scaling myself across that. Compliance. This was an interesting team because we are in an industry with a lot of regulations, with what data we hold with PII and PHI. Then we're constantly running into different situations where we need to ensure that we're fully compliant with the different rules to effectively, not be in trouble. So I had to work closely with compliance to ensure that everything that we were doing from a security engineering standpoint was approved and was given the thumbs up by them. And the next group of individuals, which may not be immediate at first, obvious at first, are the product managers. So these are the group of individuals that are coming up with the features at the very, very beginning, at the ideation phase. So when they want to create this brand new feature for this maybe fancy new login, it's not the engineering team that's coming up with it. It's the PMs that are coming up with it. So by me having a close partnership with them, by me having my name in their whole document where they fill it out, then they know that if anything touches securely remotely, so anything with authorization, sessions management, authentication, integrating a new API, anything that may touch or jeopardize our security, then they are already aware and are happy to loop me in, which was a huge win. Again, not having to go through and comb through every single product sheet that they create. I get pinged on only the relevant ones. And then legal. I think there is a super common goal for both of us, is to mitigate and reduce risk for the company. So by me partnering with legal, by me chatting with them and them having that tight-knit partnership, then I have eyes on a whole bunch of other things that I wouldn't get access to normally. The next one, hope is pretty obvious, are the developers or the engineering team. And then these are the folks who are writing the code, who are building all the features that our end customers use. So by having them trust me and to build that rapport, that's been invaluable. Having them know that, hey, I'm here for you. My goal is to not block you, is to not slow you down, but I want to empower you. So one thing that I often like to tell the engineers is, so actually, how many of you are familiar with Rainbow Road and Mario Kart? There we go. OK, so I got a few more hands this time. So I like to say that you all, like the engineers are the drivers on the Rainbow Road, that they're going as fast as possible. It's a really tricky situation. They want to just go fast, fast, fast. But then I'm the ones putting guardrails on the track so that if they bump into it, they can't fall off, that they're going to still ship features as fast as possible. But I'm going to place these guardrails for them to do it as fast and securely as possible. And that's honestly my job. So the guardrails don't slow them down. They just keep them in their own lane and keep them safe. And finally, infrastructure. If your EC2 instance already is not configured properly, then you have much bigger problems than some tiny XSS vulnerability. So having a close partnership with infrastructure, knowing that they have your back from what you're trying to secure in the web app, that like the whole platform and the base is already secured upon, that should give you a great peace of mind knowing that the base image is up to date and all the vulns have been patched, and you can solely focus on the layer 7 and 6 and down is you can leave to them. So how many of you have seen this image? OK, I got some more hands there too. So oftentimes, I feel like when people ask us, how are we doing? A very common response is, fine, good, OK. And I'm going to advocate that this is absolutely not the right response that we should be saying as security professionals. That we should not be saying that, yes, life is OK, life is going, life is great. And in fact, I don't think we're being truthful when we say that, because as all of you probably have seen, that, again, we have a lot of work to do, a lot of changing priorities, and trying to balance 1,000 different things. So I'm trying to advocate that we be more authentic with the different engineers, the different teams, people that we interact with. So be open and show them the pen test reports. Show them the bug bounty reports. Show them things that might be broken. I know it's maybe a little bit scary to be vulnerable, to be transparent, but from what I've seen from my experience is that once you have them on your team, once they're pro security, that is so powerful, is that they actively want to help. Because I don't think there's anyone who actively wants to not do security. Maybe it's not at the top of their mind, but once they realize that what they're working towards is for the greater good of the company, I think they're just all in. They want to do it once you get them to buy into your mission and vision of holistic security. The next thing I want to talk about is to be accessible. So be open and be willing to help others. And there are a few reasons for this. So the first one is just the right thing to do. Oftentimes, security might be seen as this scary, amorphous, random team off in the corner. But honestly, there's no reason why security shouldn't be like a friendly presence in the company. People should know who security is and what the team does. And secondly, it's because whether you like to admit it or not, you're most likely, as in you will, need to ask a favor from different teams. So through this, again, as the only engineer, I oftentimes would eat lunch with nearly every team. So I'd bounce from table to table, trying to make friends, to chat with them, to see how their day was, how their weekend was. And sure, it was a lot of effort to go around every single team, every single person. But again, now they knew my face, they knew who I was in the office. So that in itself was pretty powerful. I want to share another story with you. So there was one member of our legal team who had an issue with their 2FA on their personal account. I think it was for some banking app. And they were having some issues trying to set up, to scan the QR code to set up the token. And then this person asked me for help. Again, so very outside of my job responsibility. So this is their personal 2FA on a banking app, but they just didn't know how to do it and they wanted some help. So I sat down, I think spent 10 minutes, figured out some of the things, and they were super grateful. And as it turned out, I think about 6 months later, I needed a huge, huge favor. I had to push a contract through for one of our vendors, and then I was like past the deadline a little bit from like the SLA that they give, and I was like kind of walked up to them, like, can I ask you a big favor? And they were actually super open to it because I built the initial rapport with them. So they had no issue with kind of fast tracking me, which I was eternally grateful for. So I like to think of what we do, in a sense, our different transactions as kind of like working like a bank. So when we are accessible, when we try to help others, maybe not as part of our responsibility, we are effectively making a lot of deposits in the goodwill bank. And then more oftentimes than not, we're going to need to take a chunk out and to withdraw some goodwill and to ask for a big favor. So by putting in the work at the beginning, then you have a whole bunch of favors ready to go, and that in itself helped me a ton. So the next thing I want to go over is security education. For this portion, it was important, again, to get my face out to the rest of the company. As a single person with a company that's ever growing, hiring a ton of people, how could I maximize my single time, or my single person and my time to a whole audience? So the answer to that question was to do several types of training. So when employees were onboarded to join Gusto, they go through about 30 to 45-minute security onboarding training, where we go over some basic things like phishing, 2FA, password managers, or just like simple things that we might take for granted. So by me being able to spend some time advocating for security at the very forefront, like when they join the company, that in itself, they already knew what to do, and more importantly, they knew who to contact. So it was to ping me on Slack or to email security at. And then to add on top of that, we also had a specific engineering training that I built for the engineers joining Gusto. So then this was a super security 101 high-level overview of what we do, or what I do for the engineering teams in terms of going over different tools we use in our pipelines, different vulnerabilities that we've seen in the past, how we develop software securely through our SDLC, and just like really basic things. So my goal through this was not to teach them how to mitigate every single type of XSS vulnerability under the sun, or how to build some crazy 2FA flow, but rather it was for me to put a name to a face. So again, when I had to work with them on a pull request or to build a feature, that was not the first time that I was interacting with them. So I think as a lot of you have a ton of meetings on your calendars every single day, I myself also have booked basically every day with meetings. And I can honestly say that doing the Security 101 training was one of my, probably the only meeting every 2 weeks that I really did enjoy. So getting a chance to work with the engineers, to meet them, even more importantly, especially we have a few different offices across the country, to know that, hey, I'm here for you. Let me know what I can do to work with and support you in any way possible. And then one more thing I wanted to add on to this is that we occasionally ran and do run phishing campaigns. And the purpose of this is to in no way shame anyone who does click on a link or submit some information, but rather it's to show them that, hey, security is of the most importance, and that people are actively out there trying to attack and phish us. It's the idea of creating awareness and showing that even though you may be some new grad who just started on a sales team, you may seem unimportant, but in fact, that you have a ton of power by yourself with what systems you have access to, and that we have to be collectively conscious of security as an entire company. So that just had a few different wins that worked out really well. So what happens when all these things go right? What happens when you exponentially scale yourself through technical and cultural strategies? And what does success look like? So now I want to share a few screenshots of different interactions I've had with various colleagues at work. So this first one right here is one of my favorite engineers. As you can see, he found access to a system that people definitely should not have had access to. And indeed, this was quite concerning. So somehow, this engineer stumbled upon it, found it, and sent it over to me. This was a fantastic find, something that I would not have poked into, because this was a system that this engineer uses every single day and had a lot of familiarity with. And he indeed has found numerous other fun little things like that. The next screenshot shows someone in a non-engineering function. So this person also has sent quite a few emails over to myself and has shown that they indeed do care a lot about security and phishing emails. And even though they are in no way a technical security person, they're very much aware of the implications of phishing, given all the trainings, given the different interactions I've had. So by knowing that I have eyes on emails that I don't even receive, makes it a lot easier to sleep at night knowing that the company does indeed care about security and what things they do receive in the inbox, and to be cautious of what actions they can and can't take. And this might be one of my favorite interactions had with one of the engineers here. So I come in to work, 9:24, and I'm not sure how it is here in Austin, but a lot of the culture in San Francisco is that people roll in at like 10, 10:30, 11. So I think this may have been like a 10:30-ish day for me. And seeing this message was both sad in that we did have some more reports come in, but also made me really, really happy because this engineer took the time to proactively go through the reports that came in. I gave them access to the HackerOne platform to look through the different reports. And the best part of this story is that I had 2 pull requests ready to go in the afternoon with fixes for this. So even though I didn't get a chance to actually go through the reports, skim through it, but didn't go through all the details, this engineer took security to heart and proactively reached out about this and pushed out 2 fixes. So if I don't know what more I could ask for after partnering with the engineering team, getting them to love and truly care about security. I think that's what I have been trying to do for the past couple of years, and this was a culmination of a lot of the efforts paying off, and it felt really, really good. So we went over a lot of things, and as you can see, it's not easy to get a team, get an entire company to care about security and what it actually looks like in an everyday changing environment. But I think by using a mix of technical and cultural strategies, that it's honestly doable to inculcate security in your company, to get engineers and non-engineers alike to rally together and build something special. So just to summarize some of the things, the first one is to always be coding, ABC, to have static code analysis, to work through vulnerability dependency management, to have pen testing going on, to have also run a bug bounty program. And then from a cultural side is to build key relationships with different teams that you want to partner with. It's important to be accessible, to be open, to be transparent, and then to have security education for all the different engineers and non-engineers alike at your company. So now I want to go back to one of my first slides. So despite being outnumbered, despite having ever-changing priorities, and despite just being an IC without a fancy title, I was pretty powerful, and I did a lot of things. And not to brag, but this is to show you that if you're in a similar role, that it very much is doable. And obviously, these changes don't happen overnight. It took a lot of work trying to partner with the different cross-functional teams to get them to buy into this whole idea and mission of working together to create a more secure environment. Definitely not easy, but when you see all this work, as I showed you in some of the screenshots from Slack, it's a fantastic feeling. Again, so if any of you are in a similar position, don't give up hope. It definitely is possible through a lot of work to get your team members, the other company, to truly care about security. So as I started to wrap up, I'd like to thank Flea and Ricky for helping me with this presentation. They were fantastic in editing and supported me throughout this whole process. And both are honestly amazing individuals. I've had a chance to work with and learn from them. And if working in a company that cares about security seems interesting to work with people like Justin, then Gusto is hiring for all security roles. So if you're interested, you should definitely hit me up and we'll chat afterwards. And I'd like to leave you with one last quote to summarize this entire thing, is that relying solely on a title to influence is a problem that positional power does not solve, but rather true power comes from a desire to understand and solve challenges with software and people.
So I assume in your startup, so you must have lots of remote employees, right? So
What, sorry?
do you have lots of remote employees?
We do have a few of them, but I'd say 95% are based in our main offices.
Because I was going to ask, you mentioned about building key relationship with different department.
Yeah.
If for remote employees, how are you going to do it?
Absolutely, that's a great question. So I think fortunately for us, the people who were remote often came into the office about once a quarter or so. So then I would actively reach out to them if I knew that they were coming into the office just to catch up and say hi, to keep some eyes that if I knew remote engineers or whoever was coming in. And I know that's not always the case for different companies, that they are sometimes fully remote, but I was in a great position where they did come in once a quarter, and I would take the time just to go for a walk or grab a coffee with them, and that's how I built a relationship, by keeping eyes on who was coming into the office, who was remote.
What keeps you up at night?
A lot of things. What keeps me up at night back then or now? Those are probably two different answers.
I guess probably early on because it's more challenging.
Yeah. So early on was, I would say, some of the human components of security. So the phishing emails, by them installing super sketchy random packages on their computer, different extensions that gave them full access to the entire DOM to do whatever they wanted with whatever data. And I don't know if I fully realized at the very beginning how important it was to communicate and evangelize security. So the very, very beginning, I was like just heads down on the technical portion, trying to build all the software that I could. But taking a step back and realizing that the biggest risks were coming with the human side, and not that I wanted to, again, shame them in any way, but to show them that, hey, I'm here for you, and let me see how I can effectively put up those guardrails for you. So if they were to install some sketchy package, that I would put up the guardrails, but again, to know in the best case, to not install in the first place. Yeah, so it's kind of working with the human side, which kept me up at night in the beginning.
Here we go. Hi.
Hi.
Earlier you mentioned that you use cultural tools to address security concerns, and I am interested in these cultural tools. That I don't know if you can provide us examples, because the human factor, it's in my opinion quite relevant in security.
Yeah. So I think if I said cultural tools, I apologize. I think I meant more of the cultural strategies. I don't know if there are tools per se that can force someone to do something. Again, even if I did have power, as a CISO or director of security, I can't force you to really do anything other than firing you. So it's more about trying to build the soft skills and working with the different individuals to show that security is not, maybe has been seen in the past as a blocker, as attempting to slow people down. That was, I would say, is the biggest tool in a sense, is to remove that barrier by showing that there's an open, clear channel of communication between whoever wants to chat with me or the security team.
Okay. On behalf of LastCon, Nathan, we'd like to present you with a token of our appreciation.
Awesome.
So
thank you.
Very good. You're welcome.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks so much.